Today I'll be reviewing the longest floorless coaster on the planet, Dominator. Located at King's Dominion, this B&M floorless coaster had quite the history. Originally located at Geauga Lake, built when the park was owned by Six Flags, Dominator's original name was Batman Night Flight. Once Cedar Fair bought the park, it was then transformed into Dominator. But that was only shortly lived. Cedar Fair dismantled the park and moved Dominator to where it currently resides. So with the history out of the way, how does this record-breaking floorless coaster stack up? So continuing on with my previous coaster review, I'll be rating the coasters in 5 separate categories. Theming. So as I stated in the last review, basically every non-themed coaster will get a base score of 5, unless the park has truly been neglecting the ride. When I last rode Dominator, the coaster was well kept up and looked like it was recently received a paint job. There's absolutely no theming with this coaster, so yeah, it gets a 5. Intensity. I was actually surprised how intense this coaster really is. I mean, it's not I-305 intense, but it's definitely the most intense floorless coaster I've ridden. The majority of the intensity takes place during the first half of this coaster. Once you make it through the brake run, the remaining half is not as thrilling and exciting, to be honest, so I think Dominator gets a 7 for intensity. Fun factor. Okay, so Dominator can be intense at some points, but is this ride thrilling for the most part? Well, the inversions are fun. It's kind of what you would expect from your typical B&M coaster. Since this ride is lacking a 0G roll, there really isn't any airtime on Dominator, but again, that's not what this coaster is about. Dominator is about speed, intensity, and inversions. Also, I mentioned before, the second half isn't as exciting, and after that mid-course brake run, the ride really loses a ton of momentum. It's actually surprising to think that this coaster is the longest floorless coaster because it doesn't contain the traditional 7 inversions. I think the length honestly comes from that obnoxiously long brake run. B&M are pretty notorious for their long brake runs, but this is definitely no exception. I think a 7 sounds about right for the fun factor. Originality. One of the things I do like about Dominator is how original its layout is. Yes, it does perform a lot of the typical inversions you would expect on this type of coaster, but it doesn't fly into them one after another like most B&Ms do. After completing the first inversion, the ride takes a couple fast speed turns before completing the Cobra roll. The second half isn't as original because it's your typical interlocking corkscrews that we've seen in almost every single floorless coaster out there. So for its score, I'm going to settle with a 7. Smoothness. This is something that will literally make or break any roller coaster. I am happy to say Intimidator is actually really smooth. Well, until you get to the interlocking corkscrews. When I was riding Dominator, I was amazed how smooth this coaster was. Then we went through the interlocking corkscrews and came out the other side with a headache. An 8 sounds about right for this ride, especially if you are prepared for the corkscrews. So my final score comes to a 6.8, which is not a bad score. The ride can definitely use some improvement, but at the same time, you could do a lot worse, and even at King's Dominion. Well, thanks for watching. Please subscribe and check out some of my other content that I have to offer. Please leave some comments, and I love to see what you all have to say. I'll try my best to respond. Thanks, bye.